Hello and welcome to Talk from Superheroes. Hey everybody, I'm Andrew Ivamy.
And I'm Diana McCullum.
And you're listening to Talk from Superheroes, where every week we discuss a piece of heroic television or film. And this week on the podcast, we are taking a venture off the beaten path.
Yes, a path we don't normally go.
Yes.
A road diverges in a yellow wood, and we usually choose the superhero way.
Yeah, and we're like, let's stay away from the spooky, scary horror path.
Oh,
we normally
no spooks and scares.
no spooks or scares, please.
Please,
Not
no.
over here. Keep your little balloons away from us.
Oh, they might pop.
Oh, no, look out. So we are taking a bit of a detour this week, and we were talking about It. We were talking about the 2017 It, a.k.a. It Chapter 1, but technically it's just It.
It's weird. It's one of those weird ones where IMDb is like, the title's just It, but within the movie itself it was like Chapter 1. Or first chapter?
Chapter 1.
Chapter
Chapter 1.
one,
Because the
said.
second one's called It Chapter 2, and this is yet another case of it was initially called It Chapter 1, and then no one liked it, so they changed the name to It, so people wouldn't know that it was going to be, they were going to be forced to see two movies. So, this is It. Chapter 1. And you just kind of whisper that into the wind and let that blow away. But the 2017 theatrical, not the 90s TV miniseries.
And you may be wondering, why, Andrew and Diana? Why would you choose a horror movie in the middle of summer?
And you know what? Frankly, we don't need a reason. We don't need to answer to you.
Mind your business.
Yes.
You know what? Just because we've welcomed you into our homes and our lives every week for the past several years
doesn't mean that you can't mind your business.
But if you were to crack open our business,
if you must know,
if you were to take a little peek in our business sheets,
if you must know, it's because the director of this film, Andy Muschietti, is also the director of the upcoming Flash movie, which we'll be covering next week on the podcast. So we're visiting this director's other big work, which is the It franchise. So It Chapter 1 here today, and as well Chapter 2 will be available shortly on our Patreon page. So if you're interested in hearing the Patreon exclusive episode this month, which will be It Chapter 2, you're going to want to check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/fromsuperheroes. Have a look at the different bonus levels and different incentives for you to sign up so you can get Chapter 2 over there. But that's why we're doing Chapter 1 today here, building up the work of Andy Muschietti.
Yeah, I do want to kind of get a director's vibes before we see a brand new big franchise. It's weird to have a director be like, I'm doing a big thing. And I'm like, who are you? I haven't seen the It movies. So I actually am really happy we're doing this.
Well, we have seen them now, and let's just get right into the episode. Let's talk about It.
Chapter 1.
Chapter 1. All right, we have seen 2017's It, I believe both of us for the first time.
Excellent. Yes, me for the first time as well. I've never seen an It.
You'd never seen it. Have you ever read It?
No, I've read some Stephen King, but I haven't read It.
Okay.
The only thing I know about It is there's a really weird part with the kids later in the book that's super gross.
Oh,
that they did not include
yes.
in the movie.
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah,
even
yeah.
going to describe it because
Yes.
it's awful.
Yes, which they also did not include in the miniseries as well.
Thank God.
Yeah. So if
Huzzah.
I remember correctly, I hope I'm not just putting that out of my mind. But I've heard of what you're describing. I've never read It the book, but I did see the 90s 2-part miniseries with Tim Curry.
Okay.
And I do remember liking that at the time. But I had not seen these new films, so it was a first foyer for me. Diana, did you like it?
Yeah, I liked it just fine. I'm not super into horror, not for any particular reason. Mostly into superheroes. But yeah, I liked it fine. It wasn't scary, but it was kind of fun to be like, what's Pennywise gonna do next to these fucking kids? What's he gonna do to these guys? I think in a way it's almost ruined for myself because somehow I knew none of the kids died except Georgie. And that's spoilers. Oops. It's old. People have seen it. So I was kind of like, what are we gonna do to these kids? Let's just freak them out. And it was fun watching Pennywise do stuff. And but it's it's fun when they're all together. The singular ones weren't as fun. And then like the kids have pretty good chemistry and they're having like an okay time. Some of the kids are better than other kids. Some of the kids fucking rule. Oh my God, that guy from Shazam is so good in absolutely everything. So yeah, I had a fun enough time. The effects look pretty cool. It's like scary, but it's not. But like you're like they did a good job, but like it's too bright. But it's also I also like seeing things. There's so much happening. And it's a little too long, but it's a fine time. I had an okay time, and I was rooting for those kids at the end. Way to go, sluggers!
Little sluggers.
Literally, they slugged the shit out of that clown.
One of them has a baseball bat. That might be a little slugger, you know?
Literally. Andrew, did you like it? Part 1.
I didn't really like it, but I will say that as I was watching it, I wasn't vibing it. I will say it wasn't for Andrews. I think the quality of this film is better than my enjoyment of this film would lead you to believe.
We've had that happen a few times.
I'm able to dissociate enough to be like, I think the quality of this film is like a high good. It's a medium to good. And I just wasn't feeling it. It didn't unlock where I keep joy or terror in my heart. There were a few
It has to unlock one or the other.
It didn't unlock any of the places in my heart where I keep things. So I was just like, oh, okay. And like there were some moments throughout this film where I was just like, oh, that's pretty good. But like I'm really just kind of like academically saying that's pretty good, and it's not really invoking anything from me. So there's a lot of this that just isn't for me. So I'm kind of a low dislike, but I do think that the quality of this is a kind of medium like. I think it's pretty good.
I actually think I see exactly where you're coming from. Because yeah, you're watching it and you're like, wow, this is pretty well made. But at the same time, I'm like, I feel no emotional resonance about Georgie dying or about his brother dealing with that. I don't feel like a tight friendship between these kids. They seem to kind of just tolerate each other because they're all losers and they're banded together against the bullies in a survival-esque way, not in a we really like each other kind of way. So yeah, you don't get pulled in by the friendship or by the grief or by the fear. Yeah, not unlocking anything is a great way to describe this film.
Yeah, it just didn't get into where I keep things. It just didn't find it.
Your stuff's all safe.
My stuff is all safe.
But you wanted
inside.
your stuff to come out.
To be a little bit more vulnerable and experience something, because there are even fear, because there are moments of horror in this where where I'm looking at it and I'm just kind of blandly and academically being like, wow, that's really scarily done. But I'm not even like kind of jumping. I didn't feel tense. I was just like, whoa, that's a scary idea you've done. And they did it well. And I don't know why I just didn't feel anything towards it throughout it. And there is some stuff that I do find a little bit baffling about this movie, is that like part of me does wonder, I'm like, who is this movie for? Because there are moments where I'm watching it as, you know, as a late 30s man who's just like, I think that maybe if you're a bit younger, either reading that book, or if you're younger and you read the book, or you're younger and you saw the 90s miniseries, or you're younger and you see this, it scares the crap out of you. But this is rated R, so I'm like, it's for adults, it's set in the 80s, but it's clearly like, it feels like it's meant to scare kids. So I don't know who it's for. I'm like, the people who would like this the most have no sense of nostalgia for the decade it's set in, and also couldn't get a ticket to see this in theaters. So it's just kind of in a no man's land in a lot of its ideas as well.
Yeah, because, you know, Pennywise is like the scary part of this movie, air quote, and he's doing stuff. He's throwing some great stuff at the wall. But as I watch this film, nothing is more terrifying than the bully and the dad.
Yes.
Like, absolutely down to my core, I'm like, that bully is the scariest thing I've ever seen in my fucking life.
We're witnessing the birth of a serial killer.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't believe the reveal wasn't that he hadn't killed, or that he hadn't burnt down Mike's parents' house, or that he hadn't gotten to that point yet. And like, so it's like, it's weird to be watching it and being like, oh, thank God she killed her dad. I don't even care that Pennywise is here. That guy was a fucking monster.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's what I was supposed to be feeling.
Yeah. I think that's another. I agree with you. I don't know if that's what he just falls down a well, and that's the end of that storyline, and you're like, okay, I guess.
Yeah, for a movie.
See you in the well, buddo.
That's the weird thing, because it's rated R, so you can do whatever you want. But they really felt like they were scared to fuck up these children too much.
Yes.
Like, it's an
felt like
R-rated movie about terrorizing and killing kids. But they were like, but we can't show anyone killing kids.
the R rating was used for one decapitation and then a bunch of loose fucks.
Yes.
So it really just kind of made it feel like this, honest to God, there were moments where I was like, this feels like Seth Rogen's Stephen King's It. Where I'm just like, it really just feels like some teenagers who are like, what if I fucking jerked off? You ever fucking jerk off? And then it's like, oh no, a clown. And then it gets back to remembering there's a clown there. And I'm like, there's something realistic about that where I'm like, I get it. Boys are weird and ludicrous and like are just talking garbage, bullshit, curse words, sexual references to one another. There's a reality to that. But it didn't feel fun.
No, it rarely feels fun. And I mean, it is very Stephen King. Like, he loves writing this fucking gross dialogue with kids and adults. That's very much his thing. Derry, Maine is just the sweariest place on the earth. I think like 5 or 6 books are set here or something.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So that's very much Stephen King's style. But so yeah, these kids are kind of like swearing, but they don't feel like they want to be.
Yeah, it feels like they're doing it just to take advantage of the R rating, but not alienate too many audience members at the same time.
Yeah, and it almost feels like you could have just PG-13'd this.
I think
or you should have gone way harder to the R.
Yeah, I agree. I think one direction or the other would have really benefited this movie, because as it is right now, it's just, yeah, who are you? Who are you for? I feel like you're really scary for kids who have no nostalgia for this decade or this age.
I think the scariest part, and a part they do really well, but then like kind of don't do well. I actually really like the what's a projector machine called with the microfilm?
A projector.
I guess a projector.
You had it. You nailed
had
it.
I felt
specifically a slide projector.
Ooh, maybe I wanted
was
a slide
was the projector they were using.
Yeah, the slide projector slowly turning the mom into Pennywise, I think was like really scary.
That was the best done scene in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it was the best done scene, and it was like a cool, like, what is happening? Oh my God, like, we honestly can't even figure this out. I think the kids actually, for the most part, don't have big enough reactions to what's happening, which I think is a big part of this.
Okay.
Like that Pennywise thing in the garage that I just mentioned happens with the slide projector, and he jumps out and he's huge. He's like 9 feet tall, and then he disappears, and they're like, "Whoo!" Like, you'd be crying for days. You'd be screaming. You'd be running into the streets. It's only the second time you run into him.
Yeah.
And they're all like, "Phew, that one was tough."
And now he's big and came out of a projector.
Yeah,
and it's
he's
like,
in your homes.
Yeah.
He's right here.
Yeah.
So, like, except for, I think, Eddie, the guy from Shazam.
Yes.
I don't really feel like a lot of them have, like, big enough reactions to what's going on to make me feel like they're scared.
Yeah,
I never really feel like the kids are all that scared.
Yeah, I can agree with that. And I think that part of the reason why it doesn't really feel like that as well is that a lot of the sets are too small. So it feels like you're biding time before he gets to you. Like, it feels like that because it's like he's huge and he's come out of this slide projector and he's in the garage. And I'm like, that transition's amazing. This is incredible. And holy shit, he's huge. And he's like 3 inches away from a kid who has to go like, and then move 3 inches to the left and reach the end of the garage set and go, and then move 6 inches to the right and reach the end of the garage set. And then it's the same thing when it's like they're in the sewers or like everywhere that they are, or like, Eddie falls down and he's next to a fence next to a door and he's got to scurry away from the door. But the fence is right there. Like, it always feels like they're just kind of like killing time while Pennywise vamps.
Well, he's the dancing clown.
He's the dancing clown.
He's got to do his bits,
yeah,
babe.
So
if you just keep running, I think Pennywise never kills you. You're in an open field, you're scot-free from Pennywise.
Yeah.
He's like, if you just stay there while I do a bit, and if you just take the fuck off, you're good.
He needs a lot of time for bits, and it really only works in small enclosed spaces.
He loves doors.
It feels like the horror equivalent of like, when you watch like an action scene in any kind of an action movie, and like the hero is taking on like 100 henchmen who all have to kind of come one at a time. But if you look closely, you can see 2 or 3 like stunt people waiting for their turn, and they're just kind of like holding a sword and vibrating or like cocking their fist for a punch that never comes and it takes a little too long.
Yeah.
It feels like that with Pennywise sometimes, where I'm like, the spacing here doesn't quite work for what we're waiting to do.
Yeah. I think that I get that a lot. I think because Pennywise is like always out of frame. It's never him and the kid in the same frame. So yeah, a lot of it isn't like we don't get a feel of like how close they are and if he's actually gonna hurt them. Yeah, except for maybe like I was saying that like scene where he's right up on top of Freddy after Eddie I think his name is, after Eddie breaks his arm.
Yes.
And then like that scene, that clown is in that room with him, like leaned over top of him, and that's like so much more visceral and probably the scariest part.
Yes, I agree with that. I agree with that.
Imagine since these kids can't work full days, it was like film Pennywise separately. Don't scar these kids. Film the kids' reaction separately.
I mean, he was on set with those kids who were pretty freaked out by him at times.
He was definitely on set whenever they did film, but I also imagine they filmed stuff with him and the kids weren't there.
Oh, yeah. All the solo shots of him would just kind of be alone.
Yeah, there would be no reason to be like, no, you watch. You watch as we fucking make his limbs go weird and shit. Yeah.
I think that there are some good blending of practical with CGI in this. Like there is some smart filmmaking here where I'm like, that is good direction. Like simple stuff like when like one of the creatures goes into the tunnel, but their hand is still holding on and the creature disappears and then Pennywise's head comes out. And I'm like, that's just an old practical magic trick nothing where like your either CGI character or prosthetic stunt performer stepped out of frame and you had Bill Skarsgård in makeup step his head in that kind of like I'm peeking around a corner way and it looks like it's the same hand and your brain fills in that like, oh my God, that body transformed. That's freaky. So there's some like real practical, like old school cowboy switch type camera effects in here that I really appreciate and that I think they did a pretty good job of blending with some of the more CGI stuff.
Yeah, there are some really cool ones. I think my favorite is near the end when Georgie's dead body transforms into Pennywise.
Love that.
That one is such a fun mix of like evil clown, like the way that the legs just kind of pop out longer and you're like, oh yeah, that's how an evil demonic clown would definitely transform his body from a child into himself.
Yeah, and then even like the way they would change the camera angles between like the young Georgie kid to then like a wider shot where it is clearly like Skarsgård, but like they're kind of blending them together in a way.
In a really cool way. Yeah.
And I think Skarsgård does a really good job with Pennywise. I think like the physicality that he embodies and like that transition scene when it goes from Georgie to him, like the way he marionette pops up and like there's some stuff where I'm like, you physically embodied this. I can't quite tell where it switches to CG, but I can definitely tell that you've embodied a lot of this.
Yeah, not being able to tell is actually like a compliment. Because when you can tell when something switches to CG, it's like, oh no, you couldn't do anything physically and then CG took over. But yeah, he's doing definitely cool stuff to the point where I'm like, you're definitely not fully CG'd. So you're doing cool enough stuff that some of this is real. And then the computer is like, you can't actually turn your head 360 degrees. So we have to do that for you. But you're doing most of this performance. And yeah, he's scary and he's got a weird embodiment and his energy's off in a way that it's supposed to be off.
Yeah.
The big old teeth really help. And like that weird big head where like, it's not until you think about it that you're like, heads aren't that big.
The head and hairline, for me, more than the teeth, it was like the way he did his bottom lip, like the way his lips would furl down was also really unsettling as well. But yeah, like the prosthetic and makeup work on Pennywise, I think is phenomenal.
It's really, really good. This is such a small compliment, but just I actually noticed his lips and they like drew me in just because like the lip is so big and down, but it's like the lipstick goes all the way into his mouth. Like you never see where the red stops.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't even know how you would make sure that doesn't come off. Like you would have to reapply that all day. Like he has a drink of water and that's gone.
That's oil paint. Like that's
in his mouth.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's a really dedicated look. And I think he does a good job of playing both like the clown and the creepy. I mean, I haven't seen the 90s version in a long time, but I remember like thinking that Curry's is iconic. I don't know if this gets to iconic status, but it's a very, very good embodiment and performance.
I also don't think it gets too iconic. I haven't seen Tim Curry's, but I'm willing to bet it is.
It's doing a lot. It's currying it up all over the place.
It's the it.
Yeah, it is the titular it.
It is the titular it. But I will say, though, even though it's not scary, I think the middle part the best when they're at the house and there's only like 3 of them in there. Not the end part, but I really like the middle part when it's just 3 of them. And Pennywise really is just having fun. And I think that's my favorite part. Like the 3 doors that say like nothing scary, something kind of scary, very scary. I'm like, he's really fucking with these kids. And I think that's a good time. This is more Joker-esque to me than a demon.
It did feel a little Joker-esque.
But I like the Joker. So I'm down. That whole sequence is my favorite by far.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that to take one step back just about like the look and like the CGI blending with real, there are a handful of moments where this movie does kind of look cheap. And it's weirdly, surprisingly, like not the big spectacle, because like the big spectacle pieces feel planned out well enough that it's like, wow, you executed this flawlessly. Whether it's like the projector and it's like you got all these images, that hair over the face, that wig flip, the fade to black. He's giant and in the room, but you're using the flickering lights to kind of hide the seams of the perspective shift. But then there are times where it's just like a balloon, and I'm like, oh, it was too windy on set, so you CGI'd a balloon later, and the balloon looks like shit. So there was just like even the moment when the bully, I forget the bully's name,
Bauer or something,
whatever it was.
He's the bully.
The bully goes to his mailbox and finds that knife there, and I'm like, this balloon was not fucking attached to that. And it's just like the rope that the balloon is tied with is like has like an opacity set to 70%, and I'm like, that's not how. Nothing looks right or real, and it just kind of like. And I get it's not, and maybe there is a version where you can play into that to be like the lack of reality is part of it.
That's how you can tell.
But I'm just like, no, you just couldn't get that balloon to stay exactly in the place where it made red pop in your frame, so you added it digitally later, and it just kind of looks like trash. So it's weird, like the little moments in this where it's like we had to CGI an object in because for some boring, very practical film setty reason, and it looks like shit.
That is I never would have thought about the fact that balloons are really hard to go straight up. Yeah, that is a great, like, I've had a lot of balloons, and they're just fucking flapping
everywhere. If you're outdoors
everywhere.
And shit, yeah, it's in the middle of a field. It's just going wherever.
I mean, it does answer subconsciously why the straight up balloons are a little freaky, which I've never really been able to, I'm like, it is freaky, but I don't know why it is. And it's because balloons don't just go straight up. They blow in the wind, so that's a good point. But yeah, they definitely were like, the B team, they're not called the B team, B unit, yeah. B unit. B unit definitely like did this, and they were like, well, we'll do the balloons last.
Yeah, and
we got to get this Pennywise big shot.
And a team of specialists were like, how does his mouth open to nothing but skull teeth?
Yeah,
and they nailed skull teeth. But the balloon looks sloppy.
But the intern was given balloons.
Yeah.
They're like, the intern can do the balloons. Balloons are easy. And the intern was like, oh, no.
The prioritization of workflow kind of fucked up a little bit there.
And I respect the prioritization.
Yeah. It's like it's digital. It's film work triage where you're like, do we treat the toughest patients first or the simple patients first? Do we work our way up or down? And this movie was like, we start with the toughest, and if there's time left, then we'll touch up the simplest stuff. And there wasn't time left, so some simple stuff kind of fell through the cracks.
Yeah,
but a lot of this does look great. Like that. Don't let that. I'm not trying to poo-poo it too much because a lot of this does look incredible.
It looks really great, but I am a little confused. Like I'm very torn. I mentioned this very briefly earlier. I love how well lit this movie is. It's so easy to see everything, and a lot of the scary scenes happen like literally in broad daylight out in a field, and I'm like, I love that. It's not scary in any way, shape, or form, but I love that I can see it. So it's such weird choices being made here. Like the movie opens with like Georgie being like going into a dark basement and he's scared. I'm like, oh yeah, mood. And it's like raining and like you can still see things, but I'm like, oh yes, mood. And then, he goes down into the sewer and like that's probably like the most tense parts. But then after that, they're like, it is sunny every single day. You can see this leper man, no problem. You can see if someone's gonna come help you from a mile away. You won't feel alone. You won't feel trapped.
Yep.
It's such a weird choice.
It is Walking Dead Atlanta. You see that zombie from a field a fucking way.
Everything is so easy to see, and it made it easy to watch, but it didn't make me scared.
Yeah, and this kind of like harkens back to the like, aside from the like the consistent use of fuck, it feels like the daylight thing is something that like would make this a palatable very scary movie for younger kids.
Yeah. If you take the fucks out of here and maybe a little bit of the dad stuff, but that never got too graphic, like it could be PG-13.
Yeah, I think it could, and it does. I do want to say that section that you bring up, the opening section of this movie with the kidnapping, murder, loss of Georgie. That, I think, is the best section of this movie because, like, it's not broad daylight, but it's still well lit. You can still see everything, but it's not so bright it's disarming. It's just like that rainy, overcast, that gray look, that gloomy, scary basement. And it's like, this is some classic horror, and it hits the look and the vibes just right.
Yeah.
Just right. The like, I'm the sick brother. Like, hey, I'm helping you make a boat, go down to the basement, every bit of it. And also I bought into like their relationship. It was a little stiff. It was like at moments a little bit of like, I'm a Dickensian sick child. But other than that stiffness, I believed it at the very least, where I'm like, you feel outdated, but you do feel like brothers. So I bought the relationship, the look, the vibe. Love the whole opening sequence of this.
The whole opening sequence is the best part. Yeah, it is weird that Bill is like opened with as like a Dickensian sick child, and then Richie's the one who's got like or Eddie's the one who's got like all the pills and stuff, and Bill's totally healthy. I guess he did just have a cold.
Yeah.
Like just a one-off cold. But yeah, it is easily like, it's the most iconic part of the movie. Like even before this movie was made, I think everyone knew about the sewer scene from the first one. Like I assume in the miniseries, this was also a very, very good scene. I think this is also though, the part that's scary because like that kid just gets killed. Like this is a part where a kid actually dies. Like his arm gets bitten off and he dies. And every other scene is just like, run away 3 inches to the left.
Yeah, every other scene you can get away, Pennywise never takes someone's arm again, preventing them from getting away.
Yeah, and also like Georgie really gets fucked because Pennywise is supposed to be like, I live off the fear and I love fear. And I'm like, you ate that kid immediately.
And the kid actually seemed pretty chill about you.
You made him like you as a way to lure him in. Like, he wasn't scared at all. He was a little bit trepidatious to grab his boat, but I don't think that was, like, gonna fill you up. So, like, Georgie got really screwed.
Georgie does get fucked.
Yeah.
Georgie gets fucked.
Justice for Georgie.
Justice for Georgie,
Everyone else got to, like, figure it out.
Yeah, not Georgie.
Not Georgie. Although maybe not those other kids who all got eaten off screen.
Yeah,
like
a
a
lot of kids have gone missing in this town every 27 years. But this particular summer, a lot of people have gone missing. Yeah, I do think that Georgie might have skewed too young to be a Pennywise victim. Because, like, Pennywise's victims, they say that, like, there's some adults. They say there's some adults, mostly kids. And, you know, the lore that we're led to believe is that, like, he feeds off of fear. And then also literal flesh, but I guess fear makes you tastier, whatever the fuck.
I think it must just be the fear, though, because the kids' bodies are all there.
Oh, that is true. Okay, so just the fear, let's say.
Just the fear, I think.
So let's say just the fear. So it's like kids are juicier because they get spooked easier, you know? But I do think that there is a level of youth where they're not spooked by most shit because they have not developed an attachment or fear to things in life yet. You know, like Georgie's at like just kind of coming of that age where it's like, I had a traumatic experience with X and now I'm afraid of X. Where it's like, if you get a kid too young and you're like, I'm a clown, what's your opinion on clowns? They're gonna be like, fine. You're fun.
You're my first clown.
This is awesome. You're my first clown. I don't know about clowns. What about balloons? When they pop, do they scare you? Yeah, whatever. It's fun to pop balloons.
Maybe.
Like, you go too young, you don't have any of that kind of baggage to create the fear around it.
Well, I think if you're too young, I actually would disagree. It's either there's no baggage or everything's scary. It's like kids will be like, a dog, and like it's a chihuahua, but they've never met a dog and they're scared.
But everything that's scary
is equally scary.
Is equally scary, but I was going to say very briefly scary.
That's fair.
Yeah. Whereas you got to get older and develop like attachments like to problems to have that, like, I'm in the sustained fear mode for several minutes to an hour.
Yeah, kids don't have anxiety yet.
Yes, there's no anxiety.
Maybe that's why Georgie had to get his arm bitten off. I'll give you something.
This is the only way. I'm going to do this, and then you're going to be like, now I'm mostly afraid of arms getting bitten off.
Yeah,
and that's the
and
whole
maybe
thing.
I'll bite off the second arm, and I'll build on that. You got to make a relationship.
I get it. I think that. So I was buying into the brotherhood between Georgie and Bill. I think it's weird that I don't think any of these kids are doing a bad job. I think they're all talented actors, and I think they're all doing really good with what they're given. Jack Dylan Grazer as Eddie, particularly, but they're all doing good with what they're giving. But there's some chemistry factor where I'm like, you're just not quite it. You're not quite this group of kids that we're all rooting for. And I don't know what's missing, but something is missing, I think, between these kids.
There is something missing. I completely agree. I think it might even just be the script itself, because even when it's just the opening four of them, and it's kind of like a Stranger Things maybe even vibe of like four kids who actually are best friends. Like we're not adding the other kids yet. We're not adding Mike or new kid or the girl yet. So it's just the core four. And even then, they just open with them fighting and not being wildly supportive of their friend whose little brother is missing.
Yeah.
And like they can't decide what they want to do. They're not excited to hang out with each other. It really does just feel like they hang out for survival against the bullies and aren't actually friends.
Which is
like real, but it doesn't draw me into their story of like being like, a brotherhood that will never die. I'm like, once they go to university, they are never speaking to each other.
No, absolutely
like
not.
100%. Like when I haven't seen part 2 yet, but I don't believe it.
Yeah.
I think a deadly clown is the only thing that will bring these people together, because I don't think they're actually like, I love this guy. It's not a vibe I get.
Yeah, there's no love between them. They don't share any interests.
No, they don't seem to.
They don't share a single interest.
Some of them want to go to the quarry. Only one of them wants to play video games.
Yeah.
Like, you don't all want to play video games?
Yeah. You're all wildly different. You have no common interests. Whereas, like, when you compare this to something else that came out around the same time with one of the same stars, Stranger Things, which is that immediate sense of, like, found family or, like, looking for people who are like you when you feel like an outcast. And it's like, that feeling is something we can all relate to be like, who's my group? Whereas this is just like, who else is around that I don't really have anything to do with?
Yeah, who else is being bullied?
Yes.
Like, literally, who is the new guy? I keep calling him new guy, Ben. Ben, literally, they're just like, you've been stabbed twice. Would you like to join our group? They don't know him.
Yeah.
They have no interest about his interests.
I have gauze that you're in. You have a stab wound. I picked up gauze. We're friends now.
I mean, it's not quite Band of Brothers.
Yes.
But it wants to be there. Now, I will say, Sophia Lillis as Beverly has chemistry with everyone.
Yes, she does.
Holy crap.
Yes, she does.
I don't know if I was rooting for her to be with Bill or Ben, but like, wow. Like, it wasn't just like the boys are all into her. It was like she is immediately forming connections and likes these guys and like does want to hang out with them. She was actually, and for a latecomer to the group, wildly impressive. She was awesome.
Incredible. And I think that is like an S tier, like God level performance that she gives, because even before we are given kind of that character's tragic backstory / home life, it is. Her performance embodies like a look. Like when she looks at these boys, her performance embodies a look of, I do have shared interests with you, and it's being frustrated with the lot in life we've been given. And it's never said and it's never stated, but it's like she manages to get that unknown factor of a shared life experience with all of these people in the way that she looks at them, which is what immediately embodies the chemistry between her and this group, in my opinion, where I'm like, you look at when she looks at any one of these guys, like she feels something about who they all are. And I think that she's the only performer who really gets that.
Yeah, she looks at these guys and she is like, I'm actually going to be safe with these guys. Not in a way like I need them to fight the bullies for me, which is kind of what they're all teamed up for, I think. But in a way that I'm like, these guys won't hurt me and they get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
like,
allowed to.
These are
I'm allowed
some
to.
safe soft boys.
I'm allowed to exist, and I'm allowed to be me.
Yeah, and they will not be judging me like obviously everyone else
Yeah.
in this town has judged her.
Yeah, but there's a full story being told in her eyes
Yeah.
in the way that she looks at all of these people.
She conveys a wild amount of emotion. She is very,
Absolutely.
very good.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that, and I feel like Finn Wolfhard, also from
Stranger Things?
yes, thank you,
And Ghostbusters.
oh yeah, and Ghostbusters. It's just like the go-to for this.
He's the young horror guy.
Yeah, I don't know if he works as the foul-mouthed one of the group. I feel like that might be a slight miscasting.
I feel like it's a slight miscasting, but I also feel like he's not quite landing what's happening. I'm not sure if he's supposed to just be foul-mouthed or fully autistic.
Okay.
Like in that way that like you can be autistic and you can be swearing because you've heard swearing but not really getting it.
Oh, I never quite got that vibe, but I'm not gonna fight you on it.
Yeah, I'm not hard going in on it, but he's the only one that's like swearing like this. It's not like the whole group does it, and they're not
Right.
encouraging him, and it does just feel like an awkward like I actually have either autism or Asperger's.
Right.
And that's why they're like, he never shuts up and he doesn't understand social situations. I actually thought it was going to tie into why the clown hadn't been shown to him yet in some weird way.
Okay.
It didn't tie in that way at all, but I was like, oh, will his like,
Yeah,
will this affect somehow?
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't even really think about that. I thought that like it was a very real character of people who I'd met in my life who were like, I'm part of the loser group, admittedly, and I know that, but I need to be the cool alpha of the loser group, so I'm going to be unnecessarily aggressive and cussy and over hypersexualized. And it's like, oh yeah, I know this teen boy. I've gone to school with this teen boy. Like, there's always one of these in every nerdy group, which is the like, I'm going to be a bit of a shithead, and that makes me the cool one. Which is a coping mechanism for not being any of the cool ones.
I completely agree that is like a stereotype and that absolutely exists, but he's not playing it that way. So either he is not playing the character right, or it's supposed to be in the other direction. And no matter what, he's landed too far in the middle of whatever he's trying to do.
I get that. Yeah.
But also, I think
he
did this before Stranger Things. This came out 2017 and Stranger Things was 2016. So I don't know which one had more effects and which one had more post-production.
Yeah, it really,
They must have been on top of each other.
He looks younger in this, even though it came out later. So I almost feel like this filmed first, but Stranger Things got out sooner.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's
I could believe that because this has like a lot of special effects and Stranger Things does too, but like in a more limited way. Season 1 did. Season 1 was kind of like just the Demogorgon.
Yeah.
You didn't see him all that often. It wasn't the fucking maniac process it got by season 4. Where it's like, you can't see it yet. It's not done.
It's not done. And even once you could see it, please know that it's not done.
We were not releasing.
We're still going to be changing it later.
We're not releasing promos to reviewers because it's not done. I've never gotten an email from Netflix that was so shot down as the season 4 request for screeners.
Oh boy, Stranger Things. There's an alternate universe, I feel like, where Andy Muschietti directed Stranger Things and the Duffer Brothers did this.
Ooh.
Because apparently the Duffer Brothers were in conversation to do this. So it's like, I feel like either one of them could have just shaken hands and switched jobs in the night.
Oh, yeah.
I guess either one of the three of them in that scenario, since one of them are brothers.
Yeah.
But those...
Either way, you got an 80s horror franchise with kids and one girl and all boys. It's you're gonna do just fine.
Yeah.
No matter who directs that out of the two options.
Yeah. A Stephen King interpretation or Stephen King influenced. Either way, you're getting a good bit of Stephen King around.
You're getting a good bit. Now, I need to talk about the plot just a little bit, and not the plot about Pennywise.
Okay.
I need to talk about how, so many kids have gone missing. And it's like, even if there's not a lot of cops, like the FBI would be here or something, or the cops who are here would be like, holy shit, we got to do something. Or there'd be more cops. This is so many kids missing. And literally no one thinks the bully who carves his name into children is maybe the one doing this?
I'm kind of okay with that because he is the son of the main cop in this small town.
I need to know how many people exactly are in this small town. Because if it's more than like 500 and we have at least 5 cops, the other 4 cops would be like, your son is killing children.
He is the knife psychopath who carves his name into kids' bellies.
Yes. Like, that scene was insane. And they also never said what Ben did that he was so like, I need to carve my name in this kid's belly.
I don't think he did anything. I think it was just existing in a town, and this guy's a psycho.
He is a psycho, but that particular one was wildly personal feeling for some reason.
Yeah, it was pretty personal feeling.
And I didn't really get what was going on there. But yeah, he would definitely be like suspect number one. His friend goes missing later. Like one of his core crew is killed, and I'd be like, he definitely did it, guys.
Yes. His one of his buddies went missing. They all ran into the woods with a knife, and only 3 of the 4 of them came out. Yes. Question this boy.
Even if the police won't arrest him, I think the other cops would watch him.
Yeah.
They would be like, well, we're going to keep an eye on
We're following this boy 20. A loose mob of people in town. All the parents of missing children.
That's the thing I'm getting at. There's like at least 6 kids missing. That's at least 12 adults who would be like, it was that guy.
Yeah. Someone's
he stabbed my son.
Someone's going to go for street justice and go after that kid. Like, and especially when they show it's like, a mother is like waiting outside of the school and hoping her daughter shows up who's gone missing. And the sheriff's like 6 feet away just staring at her. And I'm like, that's police intimidation. He's staring at her so she doesn't question his son coming out of school.
Oh, that might be what's happening.
Yeah. Like that's what, like she's waiting to see what, I think she's waiting to see what that boy does.
And what he does.
And the sheriff is like, you go home and you don't follow my boy.
Maybe. Yeah, that could definitely be it. But like, we're getting to the point where the parents would be outnumbering that.
At this point, the parents could easily just take justice into their own hands.
Yeah, because like, wow, these kids are out there unsupervised a lot for like 6 kids being missing and murdered.
Yeah.
There's a big sign at one point that's like curfew 7 p.m. And I'm like, but wander around till then? Alone?
Yeah. And some adults. So the whole thing that like a school is like, there's a 7 p.m. curfew because too many of you kids have gone missing, and some adults. Like, that's a murderer. That's a murderer. You know that's a murderer. A couple kids go missing. I'm saying, like, still use all of your resources to look for those kids. But there is a chance that kids have gotten themselves into trouble or some kind of a dangerous scenario. If that many kids and adults start going missing, that is a serial killer in your town.
Let me tell you a true story.
Outside of the possibility of Pennywise and outside of the possibility of a mystical clown named Pennywise.
You're not presuming mystical clown.
You should never presume mystical clown.
This doesn't end up being like the city council knew about Pennywise and every 27 years they just let him do his business, which would be a funny twist.
Yeah.
But I am from a small town that had a serial killer in the early 90s who was on the loose. And let me tell you, no kid went anywhere alone until they caught him. And it was like 6 or 7 months. Halloween was canceled. You walked your kid into the school. You picked up your kid inside the school and walked them to the car. This is what happens when a killer's on the loose in your small town.
In a small town. Yep.
Yes, absolutely. No, for a fact, guys.
For sure. And there is no economic reason to fight it. It's not like it's the small town from Jaws.
And the sharks destroying tourism.
Yeah. Exactly. It's
Pennywise is killing the tourists.
There's no scene where the mayor is like, if we call a serial killer, then the spring festival will be called off, and we make so much money in tourism from the spring festival. No, for the summer festival, it's like no. There's no monetary or economic reason or other pressures to not label this a serial killer.
No, these kids are just like, they're like, yeah, let them kill them. Whatever. We don't care.
And some adults.
You're really on the adult. Who are the adults, though?
Who are the some adults? Some of the more easily spooked adults in town, like some of the more fearful adults in town, are the ones who are gone missing.
Oh man, great points. Okay, I have one more plot thing that I need. There's no way to unpack this. It is so philosophical. Was the blood in the bathroom real? what the fuck is happening there? Like, if the dad touched the bathroom, was it wet or not?
I'm going to say it was not wet in any way.
How do you clean up? Like, why does the cloth think it's wet when you clean it up? Why does a bucket fill with blood as you clean this bathroom? Is it who cleans it?
I buy into this to a certain degree.
I buy into it as well, but I need to know the mechanics of it.
It is real if you believe it's real. So the clown, or it, I guess, Pennywise being an embodiment or version of it, but not necessarily the totality of it, it is creating a reality of what it is that you are afraid, and that is real to you. Mm-hmm. So the father did not fear it or see it, so the father cannot interact with it. It does not exist in the father's eyes.
Okay.
All right. But when she sees it, she thinks it's real. She's afraid of it, so it's real to her. And these kids are afraid of it too, so it's real to them. So yes, the bucket is filling with blood, and they can wipe it and clean it off. But if someone went and cut into those garbage bags they threw out, they would find perfectly clean sponges and mops, and everything would be perfectly clean. But every way that they interact with it is entirely real to them. So like that day, if like the dad came home, it would just be like a freshly cleaned bathroom for no reason, because they still use real water and real soap, but to clean off an imaginary thing that only they can interact with.
He walks in, he's like, holy shit.
You guys really fucking cleaned this bathroom.
This is spark, because they would have been scrubbing to the bone to get the fake blood out.
So I think that, anyone cuts into those garbage bags, you're just going to find clean sponges, clean rags, clean paper towels.
I would agree with that, but it feels weird that this one thing is a thing that lingers that it does. Whereas, like, no other point is it like, he broke my bed, and now I think my bed is broken all the time, but my parents don't see it. Like,
that's a good point, yeah.
And also, she doesn't say that everything's covered with blood. They can see it as well. So, like, it's just a weird one-off. The one-offness of it maybe is what is weird. Yeah.
No, I could see that. I would say visually, that was another one that I really liked, though.
That was very Evil Dead to me.
Yeah, that
holding her head over the sink as blood just like sprays everywhere. Very Sam Raimi.
I'm sure a truly miserable scene to film for Sophia Lillis.
Oh my God.
And shout out to you for powering through that. But yes, it felt somewhere between Evil Dead and Carrie. And I'm like, this is the right amount of true horror meets camp. And also a little bit, I forget which Nightmare on Elm Street it was that has the blood through the bathtub as well. So a bit Nightmare on Elm Street, a bit Carrie. But I'm like, this is one where I'm like, this feels like a lot of different things. And it feels practical and it feels gritty. And it's just shot right. And the lighting's incredible. And then like the dad coming in and not seeing or acknowledging it. And that like, why'd you cut your hair? And bringing up something different. And her performance was great. Like, this was a wonderfully executed sequence.
Yeah, she really got like the most psychologically damaging ones, because like everyone else got like jump scares, a clown, they're scary, like, you know, a dead soldier turns into Pennywise and chases you for a minute. But hers took like 20 minutes. She had to go get a tape measure, and then this whole fucked up thing where the tape measure goes all the way down and comes up bloody.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like so slow and methodical for her.
Well, hers was like a conceptual fear of the changes to her body, whereas everyone else had a very literal and physical manifestation of a fear. But I think that like that made it scarier. This was one of the ones where I'm like, this is really scary. Like, I do like the slide projector scene, and obviously that is a practical physical threat in that scenario. But this is one where I'm like, this is actually tense.
Yeah.
This was the only one where I was like, ooh, I feel tense here.
Yeah, this one gets in your bones.
The blur of reality is getting ethereal, and I do not like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that one is very, very good.
Well, I'm feeling pretty good on it. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good. Yeah, I think we were very fair to it. I'm curious how they do a second one, but like what else they do different to warrant a second one.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess you don't know the format, do you?
No, I mean, I assume it's 27 years later, I'm going to guess.
Okay, yeah.
And there's going to get scary stuff again?
Something like that, yeah, because I saw the 90s series, so I know a little bit more about the expectations, maybe, so I kind of know where they're going here. But yeah, it'll be interesting to cover Chapter 2 on the Patreon.
I will say this is actually probably a part 1 and part 2 I won't complain about, because this felt like a complete story.
It did feel pretty concluded here,
Yeah, like if there was no part 2, I'd be like, they did it!
Yeah.
Hands clean.
Yeah, and even outside of it being like based on a pre-existing literary work, which like I know, like when I've mentioned before, when something's a part 1 and 2 and it's based on a pre-existing thing, I give it a bit more leeway. Mm-hmm. But on top of that, it's just like this does feel like a more of a traditional. We could do a sequel. Like that is the end. And obviously like the next one is a very natural and obvious jump back into that story, but it still feels like a sequel more than a continuation or like a hard stop and pick up where we left off. It's nice.
But yeah, so yeah, we will be doing part 2 on the Patreon if you want to hear our thoughts when that happens.
That's right. So we'll go in for the close and ask the final question of what would you change? So now that we discussed everything, what would you change about this if you could change anything? But before we do, let's jump right to the Patreon because we were just mentioning that you can support us over on Patreon, which is a monthly subscription service. You subscribe at whatever level is in your budget, and you get cool bonuses for doing it. Bonuses like our It Chapter 2 Patreon exclusive episode, because every month we do a Patreon exclusive episode of the podcast just for our patron subscribers.
Yes, and you can get the extra episode at the $10 level, and you will have access to every previous extra episode at that level. It is a full episode about a movie we have never covered on the regular podcast, ad-free and full of fun.
And as well, we also added a new level to our Patreon page.
New stuff, guys.
New stuff just dropped at $3. At $3, you can get our episodes ad-free and early, which is awesome. So $3, you get the episodes ad-free and early. And that's also really great if it's a new movie coming out and you want to check out maybe our spoiler-free review before you go to the theater and go check out something. You're going to get our episodes early. You're going to get them ad-free at the $3 level. Lots of cool bonuses over there. Depending on what is in your budget, you can even do $1 a month, and then you get our webcomic early, and you get our love and support, because those dollar patrons really add up, and they're how we pay our bills. They're how we make this our full-time job, and it really makes a difference. So head on over to patreon.com/fromsuperheroes. That is patreon.com/fromsuperheroes. Sign up for what's in your budget, and thank you to all of our current and future patrons.
Thank you so much, patrons.
And as well, if you want a free way to support the podcast, you can do that by rate, reviewing, and subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podcast Addict, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah, a little review really helps us in our hearts and on the charts. Oh, that rhymes.
Whoa! That felt good, too.
That felt good. That wasn't pre-prepared. That was just straight from me.
Because sometimes unintentional rhymes don't feel good. That felt good. That felt good to hear.
Yeah.
I liked being here for that moment.
Oh, man, guys, that was special. Oh, I hope I've just earned a review.
Oh.
Help us on
in
the
our
charts,
hearts and on the charts.
Oh, boy. And so that's a metaphor and the truth.
Or did you say on the charts in our hearts? Which was first?
We can listen back later.
Listen back.
We'll relive the magic.
Oh.
We recorded this, baby.
Leave that as a review. Leave a review if you can. Free way to support the show. We really appreciate it. Rate and review, and yeah, we appreciate all of you who have and who will.
It always helps us out, and helps us if people are deciding whether to listen to our podcast. If there's a nice new review there telling us that we're good.
On the charts and in our hearts, or in the hearts on our charts.
Both work.
Both work.
Both work.
Well, let's go in for the close. Let's ask the final question of what would you change, Diana? What would you change?
My change is I'm going to push this further into an R rating. I am going to fuck up these kids. I want to be scared more than I want to be entertained if I'm going into a horror movie. I'm like, I actually do want a little jump scare. I want to feel like I'm worried about these characters.
You want more Nightmare on Elm Street, less Stand By Me.
Yeah. I mean, Stand By Me is actually very psychologically traumatizing as a film.
In a different way.
Maybe Goonies, less Goonies, less
okay.
some other esque thing. But but the way I'm going to do it is I'm actually going to show some of the deaths of these other kids. I'm going to like cut out a little bit of time. Like, this movie's a little too long. I don't know if we need all of these Pennywise scares, but I think Stranger Things season 4 actually did a really great thing of opening their season up with like a kill of a random girl who isn't in the rest of the show, because then they can like, there's stakes, and like they do kill Georgie off the top, but like it's like a month ago. It's kind of don't really see him die for sure. Like, you're pretty sure he's dead. So I would like, they keep mentioning these missing kids. I think an hour in, I would have showed another kid getting killed. They do like the bully's friend, I guess, died, but they also cut away so quick. I was like, did he? I really need to see a kid die. like definitely can't come back in the sequel. That kid is dead. Pennywise has killed him. To be like, yes, he does kill them. This isn't just...
Because even the bodies that float down at the end, I'm like, are they salvageable? Did they go back to their lives? Like,
it's kind of like left up in the air, right? Like,
Yeah.
did they ever call the police? And they were like, the bodies are down in the well, by the way. Like, questions need to be answered. So I'm gonna terrorize these kids more. Because even when they're like, I think that because the scariest part is like Eddie getting that fucked up broken arm.
yeah.
And I'm like, we can do that to the kids a bit more, or we can actually murder one of them. So I'm going to fuck up the kids a little bit more to make me a little bit more scared that kids might die.
I love that.
I'm going to kill a kid, so I'm going to be scared a kid might die. But it's an R-rated horror movie, and you made it all about children, so it's your fault.
Yeah.
Stephen King.
Yeah.
/ the studio.
Get horror with it. I love it.
Or show an adult getting killed.
Yeah.
Other than the cop for some reason. That was really random. That like Pennywise didn't even get to eat that one.
No, that was just for fun. That was just for fun.
funsies.
Yeah.
So that's gonna be my big change. I'm gonna terrorize and kill the kids a little bit more.
Love it.
What would you change?
I'm on board with yours, obviously, 100%. My other big change is this desperately needs to be modernized.
Oh,
and even though it
modernized.
seems like it has, I would argue that this has not been modernized at all. It came out in 2017. The film is set in the 80s, and it's based on a book that came out in the 80s that is set in the 50s. And it feels like in 2017 or in right now 2023, I am watching these children who are meant to be set in the 80s really live a life from the 50s because they didn't update the writing of these kids or the book in a lot of different ways.
Okay.
Where like it really feels like it's like you guys remember what growing up in a small town Maine in the 50s was like, right? And I'm like, no, this is very unrelatable and feels out of place the way it's like, yeah, the way that like 5 kids who have nothing in common and don't like each other and are kind of shitty are all friends because everyone who's cool is trying to murder you at all times in high school. And I'm like, things actually aren't like that anymore. Things were kind of phasing out of that in the 80s. And I think like Stranger Things is such a great contrast of what modernizing that idea looks like, to be like, here's outcasts, but it's at a time where you have real friendships and where you share interests and you actually talk about what's going on in your life. And it is this movement forward to being more emotionally relevant, like kids to become adults. And it's not that previous generation of we're just angry and bullying all the time. And the people who are like that are from that previous generation. So like it really does feel like these are 50s children and it in no way feels like it's 80s children. It just doesn't feel right. They don't have anything in common. They don't have shared interests. There's not stuff that they're into. They are just children trying not to be murdered, a thing that bullies are allowed to get away with because it's 19-dickety-2 in this city.
I get what you're saying. I also, now that you've said that, I'm like, yeah, I can feel it in the story now more. Like, even though they've added like Street Fighter, like it's still very much a like, we don't seem like we have phones or TV or news.
Yeah.
Or like they even use the radios so sparingly. Like they don't actually like, it's not a plot point later that they have walkie-talkies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not even like a rotary phone. No one's like, my favorite TV show is like, at no point is it like, we all got to get to the arcade to play Street Fighter. It's like, look, there is Street Fighter. And that lets you know that this takes place in the 80s. But none of the feeling of these children embodies the feeling of the 80s. And why would it? It was written in the 80s to embody growing up in the 50s. and they didn't modernize that friendship or that relationship in any way. So it needs an updating as to like how kids in the 80s react. And even if it's not real, because like Stranger Things is a heightened nostalgic memory perception of what the 80s was, which wasn't really what it was, but that's what we remember it being. This isn't even what anyone remembers the 80s
No,
being.
it's not the vibes I get from the 80s. See, what's very funny is I completely agree with this change, and I love it. When you said you have to modernize it, I'm like, yes, it shouldn't be 5 white boys, 1 woman, and a black kid.
I think that is also very
It's
true.
Which we didn't talk about at all,
Yeah.
but it kind of just goes without saying that that's not cool. I mean,
Yeah.
like when the one kid of color gets no storyline and joins the team halfway through, it's like, that's embarrassing, guys.
Yeah, at least
Like, at least let him be an OG member of the group.
at least he has like a real fear and a thing to do, and isn't like, you know, like the Jewish kid's entire personality is like, I'm here, I'm Jewish, I've got that, and that's it. And like
He
there's
sits
no
really straight up.
and there's no but yeah,
I don't know if
no,
you noticed. He's very tense.
but no interests, no hobbies, just like I am the one-dimensional portrayal of this, and that is it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So maybe
modernization in many different
regards
in many
would have
different
made this movie
regards.
better. Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent. Those are fun changes. Yes, I totally agree.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wonderful.
And make it more violent.
And kill him.
Kill them. Kill a few fools. Well, that's going to be it for this week's podcast. We will be back next week to talk about The Flash. So we'll be talking about that next week on the Mainline Podcast. But once again, if you want to hear us talk about It Chapter 2, which we haven't seen it yet. We'll be watching it and recording that episode shortly. That'll be up this week on the Patreon page. If you want to hear us talk about It Chapter 2, head over to patreon.com/fromsuperheroes. We'll be back next week to talk about The Flash. And in the meantime, if you want to get a hold of us, you can find me on Instagram at Ivamey, Ivimey.
You can find me at Words of Diana.
And you can find both of us at From Superheroes. And we'll talk to y'all next week.
Bye.